Two boys stood in a field outside the oratory walls, each with a stone in his hand. The quarrel had started the way these things always start: a word, a name, an insult thrown out in front of others where it could not be taken back. Words, though, are easy to recover from. Stones are not. Each boy had already chosen his. Not a pebble, not a warning, but something with enough weight behind it to end the argument permanently. One boy raised his arm. A third boy stepped in between them. No one had invited him. No insult had touched him. No stone had his name on it. He was slight, easy to overlook in a crowd, the kind of boy a teacher might forget was even in the room. And yet he walked directly into the space between the two raised arms and stood there, as if the matter concerned him more than it concerned either of the boys actually holding the rocks. What he did next, neither boy expected. Turin, Italy, 1850. The oratory belonged to a priest named Don Bosco, and it was not the kind of place that produced gentle stories by accident. He had built it out of the boys no one else wanted. Apprentices worked half to death by their masters. Street boys who had learned to steal before they learned to read. Sons sent away by fathers who had simply stopped trying. Don Bosco loved them without illusions. He knew exactly what they were capable of, in both directions. One winter, the classroom stove went cold. It should not have. The stove was the one thing in that room that every boy depended on without exception. Rich or poor, devout or indifferent, all of them needed the same fire. When it was finally lit that morning, it did not warm the room. It filled it with smoke. Someone went to check it out and found the flue packed deliberately. Snow, gravel, scraps shoved in tight enough that whoever had done it must have spent real time at the task. Must have known exactly what the smoke would do in that room. Must have wanted it to happen. The teacher wanted a name. He got one. Dominic Savio. He was called to the front. The room went the particular kind of quiet that happens when everyone wants to watch a guilty boy's face. He did not deny it. He did not explain himself. He did not protest. He did not point anywhere else in the room. He stood where he was told to stand and said nothing else at all. Some boys bluster when they're caught. Some boys cry. Dominic did neither. He was punished. The stove was repaired. The smoke cleared. The oratory, as oratories do, moved on to the next ordinary day, and Dominic Savio went back to his seat carrying the kind of reputation a boy earns exactly once and doesn't shake off quickly. That should have been the end of it. Weeks later, a different boy was brought to see the teacher, for some unrelated matter. But somewhere in that conversation, almost as an aside, he said something that stopped the room cold. I was the one who packed the stove. It was not Dominic. Not one piece of it. Not the snow, not the gravel, not the silence that followed. He had known from the first morning exactly whose fault it was, and he had let everyone in that room believe otherwise. Had let himself be punished for it. Had carried the reputation for it through every week since, and had never once opened his mouth to correct it. He had been asked why, once it came out, and the answer he gave did not sound like a child trying to talk his way into someone's good opinion. He said that Christ had stood accused before men who lied about him, and that Christ had not opened his mouth to correct a single one of them. If silence had been good enough for that, he didn't see why it shouldn't be good enough for a stove. It was the kind of answer that made the teacher stop quite knowing what to do with him. And it was the same boy who now stood between two raised stones, having walked into a quarrel that was not his, for boys who had not asked him to come. He reached into his coat and drew out a small crucifix, holding it where both of them could see it, and told them that before either stone was thrown, they owed it a look. Neither boy threw. He was not finished. He walked to the first boy and knelt down directly in front of him. Knelt the way a man kneels before something he is about to lose, not before something he intends to command. If you mean to throw it, he said, throw it at me first. The boy's arm did not move. A moment earlier, the stone had a clear path from his hand to the boy who had insulted him. Now that path ran straight through someone who had no part in any of it, who had nothing to defend and nothing to avenge, kneeling there with his eyes open. Dominic crossed to the second boy and knelt again, said the same thing, "Throw it at me first." The stones did not fall because anyone argued the boys out of their anger. They fell because for one long moment, each boy had to look at exactly what his anger was about to cost. And the cost had a face, and the face was kneeling in front of him, asking for nothing. He was still a boy himself when all of this happened. Not a priest, not an old monk handed down through decades of sayings. A student other students could have shoved aside in a hallway without a second thought. But he had already settled on the words he meant to live by: death rather than sin. He never reached 15. Near the end, with his body already failing, he opened his eyes one last time and said only that he was seeing wonderful things. The church would later call him a saint. Perhaps the harder thing to explain is not that he died so young. It's that a boy of that age had already learned how to stand silent under a blame that wasn't his, how to kneel down in front of a stone meant for someone else, and how to make two angry boys understand, without raising his voice once, that the stone in his hand could only ever break a body. What worried him, kneeling there in front of it, was what it would do to their souls. And a soul to Dominic was worth infinitely more than the body trying to defend it.